I showed up 15 minutes early. The program said family arrivals were scheduled at 8 a.m. sharp, but I've learned my lesson over the years. Early is safer. Yale's South Quad was already filling with people in suits and spring dresses, balancing lattes and name cards. My heels clicked against the cobblestone, unnoticed. They were already there. My parents, perfectly placed in the second row, seats marked, Family of Verity Casmi. My father leaned back, gesturing widely as he spoke to a donor in a navy blazer. My mother waved her champagne flute like she was narrating a holiday memory. Verity stood beside them, radiant, surrounded by people who knew how to clap on cue. I stood a few paces behind, clutching the cream-colored envelope marked Reserved Access. I held it out to the usher at the side gate. He scanned the QR code, paused, checked his tablet again, then looked at me with polite confusion. "I'm sorry, miss. I don't see your name on the family list." "You might need to stand in the general section." I didn't argue, just nodded, thanked him, and stepped aside. A woman behind me, older, maybe an aunt of another graduate, smiled at me like I was an intern who had misplaced her badge. I walked along the edge of the seating area, looking for an empty chair. None. I ended up leaning against a marble column by the speaker tent, close enough to hear the names being practiced, far enough to be out of the photos. I spotted my mother first. She noticed me, didn't wave, just turned slightly, like adjusting her angle for the camera. I moved back a few steps, away from the center. "Maybe you missed your email," she'd said 2 weeks ago when I asked if they were coordinating family seats. Or maybe it was sent to your old address again? Back then, I thought it was a simple error. Now, standing there while the ushers passed out gift bags labeled Casmi Family, I realized this wasn't about logistics, it was about narrative. They'd spent years fine-tuning the picture. The perfect daughter, the visionary, the family that raised her. No edits, no distractions, no unwanted variables. No me. It wasn't the first time. There was the fundraiser where my name wasn't on the placard, the ski trip photo that left out the youngest sibling, the school award dinner where Verity's name was called for both of our volunteer hours. A pattern. I stood in the shadows watching Verity soak it in. The cameras followed her like bees to sugar. She knew how to tilt her head just slightly when she laughed, how to place her hand lightly on someone's shoulder when greeting them. She spoke like a polished TED speaker, every sentence made for quoting. And me? I was the one who wrote most of those speeches when we were in high school, the one who coached her through her first debate meet, the one who stayed up helping her rehearse her Harvard interview while our parents packed the car for her campus visit. Her voice always rang louder in the house. Mine was the noise that filled the silence when she wasn't talking. Maya Angelou once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." I wasn't angry, not yet, just cataloging. I watched, I listened. Every handshake, every over-rehearsed compliment, every fake, "You deserve this," from people who'd never met her until this morning. Then came the official program. A young assistant passed them out row by row. I managed to get a copy from someone stepping out for a phone call. Verity's name was bolded across the top. Honoring Verity Casmi, School of Management, class speaker. I flipped to the section marked Family Honors Contributions. Victor Casmi, Executive Chairman. Marisol Vance Casmi, Philanthropy Board Chair. Verity Casmi, Future Partner. Renshaw Casmi. Capital. No mention of the other daughter, not even a middle name, not even a footnote. I wasn't just forgotten. I was intentionally deleted. There's a difference. I closed the program slowly, folded it, slipped it into my tote. This wasn't sadness. This was data. The final moment came near the photo displays. As guests made their way to the reception tent, I wandered toward the gallery wall. Dozens of framed moments from Verity's life. Baby photos, first-grade art shows, prom, internships abroad. In the center, a blown-up family portrait from a gala 3 years ago. One of the last times we were all in the same room. But I wasn't in it. No, I had been in it. I remembered standing on the far left beside my father, slightly turned because the light was too bright. But in this version, I was cropped out. Cleanly, deliberately. I stared at the picture until it blurred. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because pain this old doesn't ask for permission anymore. It just lives with you. Part of me wanted to walk out, leave, send them a message. But a louder part said, no, stay, let's see how far they're willing to go. I pulled out my phone, took a picture of the cropped portrait, saved it to a new folder. One word, receipts. After the photos were taken, after the speeches on the quad wrapped up, and the sun began to sink behind Yale's stone towers, I made my way into the Arcadia Ballroom, through the west entrance, the same place they'd used to host some political fundraiser the year Verity interned in D.C. Back then, they had her name printed across the center of the donor wall. 30 interns in the room, but somehow only one was worth mentioning. Inside, the room was all gold and crystal. Champagne flutes lifted in synchrony. People in suits too expensive to be comfortable. Her face on the projection screen, smiling on a loop. Her pitch, her headlines, her vision. I smiled at the first few people who nodded my way. They didn't know who I was, not really. I could have been the assistant, the tech support, someone's +1. My dress was 3 seasons old, borrowed from my college roommate. It wasn't that I didn't belong in the room, it was that I wasn't expected to. A new slide appeared. The pitch deck, slide number 7, title, Reframing Urban Microgrids, Community-Driven, Scalable, Sustainable. I remembered it, not like it was some vague memory, but down to the draft version saved on my drive. I'd written that slide on a Tuesday night, sweatpants, wine, screen dimmed, notes spread across my floor. Every word was mine. And yet, at the bottom in pale blue italics, concept by Verity Kazmi. I didn't blink, didn't gasp, just stood there, hands calmly holding the edges of my clutch as if it hadn't just sucker punched me. The theft wasn't what stunned me, it was how well it was done. Quiet, elegant, strategic. Years ago, she said to me, drinking tea in our apartment while I was outlining this exact proposal. You know, people trust projects more when one name leads it. Too many cooks, right? I had laughed. Thought she meant it as a joke. I'd handed her my notebook that night. Use this if it helps, I said. It helped, all right. What she took wasn't just an idea, it was the narrative. I stood by the catering station, listening to her be called visionary. The media director of a green energy firm clasped her hand and said, "You've done more by 30 than most of us will by 60. I bit the inside of my cheek. The man meant it as a compliment. Of course he did. But I remembered the night Verity walked into my room, back when we were still in lockdown, asking me to review her grant application draft. It was half done, a mess. I rewrote it that night while she took a nap. It was supposed to be our project, but she pitched it solo. She incorporated it under her name. She accepted the first seed check before I even knew the meeting had happened. That's when I learned that betrayal doesn't always come with blood. Sometimes it comes with NDAs and photos in Forbes. A waiter brushed by with a tray of mini crab cakes. I took one, not because I was hungry, but to give my hands something to do. On stage, she took the mic. Her hair was curled to perfection, her voice precise. I want to thank everyone who believed in me, my mentors, my team, and of course, my incredible family. Dad, Mom, I wouldn't be here without your strength. There was no pause, no glance my way, not even a generalized sibling shout-out. I watched my father nod proudly, like he was watching a stock ticker go green. My mother turned toward the camera with a glass of champagne like she was born for B-roll footage. I stood by the back column, catching looks from attendees. One woman smiled politely and leaned toward her husband. "Is that the PR manager?" I looked away. Then my mother walked past me, trailing her perfume, and said softly without making eye contact, "Let's not make tonight about you." That landed. They hadn't just taken my name off. They'd placed it under hers. Later, a donor approached me. He had a face like he used to run a bank. "Your sister's financial modeling." Impressive work, rare for young women to be that structured. I nodded once, not too long, not too short. "That framework," he added, "it's got spine." He had no idea I wrote the first draft of it on a napkin at 2:00 a.m. in a Waffle House off Route 15 while waiting for Verity to pick me up. I stepped away to the hallway, not rushing, just steady. Found a mirror with a gilded frame, leaned forward, and mouthed my name like I hadn't in years. Thayer. If you speak now, they'll turn you into the jealous one. If you stay silent, they'll keep calling her the only one. I looked myself in the eye, gave the faintest nod, and decided silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was strategy. After Verity's closing remarks and the crowd's second round of applause, I took the long way to the reception hall, through the east corridor, past the framed glass windows, where my reflection looked thinner than usual. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was everything else. The photo wall was near the entrance. They'd set it up like a museum display, an exhibit of Verity's perfectly curated life. Birthday balloons, first solo piano recital, debate championships, travel photos, charity events. The lighting was warm, gold frames, polished captions, not a single one with me in it, but one picture did catch me off guard. It was from the gala at the Chicago Arts Foundation. I remembered the velvet dress that clung a little too tight, the heels that blistered both feet, and the way Dad kept pulling me closer so we could stay centered. I remembered standing next to him. In this version, I was gone, cropped clean. My breath stuttered, like I'd stepped into a freezer. I leaned in closer, hoping, really hoping, it was just the angle. It wasn't. I stared at that photo for a while, long enough for my eyes to adjust, long enough to realize what they had done wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, surgical. They didn't forget me. They removed me. My name wasn't missing from the list because someone made a typo. My seat wasn't skipped by accident. These were choices, patterns, all wrapped in politeness and event coordination and, oh, you must have missed the email. A toast was underway in the main hall. I made my way back in as the clinking of glasses rang out. My father stood near the stage, holding a flute of rosé. Well, we're just glad she remembered to bring her shoes this time. Small wins, right? The crowd laughed. My mother put a soft hand on his shoulder as if to say, don't be too mean. I sipped my drink. Let the smile rest on my lips. No reaction. Not because I wasn't used to it, but because it was familiar, like a cold tile floor in winter. You stop flinching when your feet are numb. He'd made that same joke in high school, at my expense, at a PTA brunch when I forgot my flats. Back then, I laughed with them, because laughter sometimes feels easier than saying, please stop using me as your warm-up act. Jokes, when repeated enough, become your name. And I'd worn that punchline like a name tag for years. The pain wasn't in the joke. It was in knowing they still thought it worked. The claps died down, replaced by another round of mingling. I stood near the dessert table, watching people toast to Verity's brilliance. Again. Someone brought up her nonprofit idea, said it was a stroke of genius. I remembered helping her with the financial model for it 2 years ago, built it from scratch over 3 nights while she was nursing a breakup and couldn't focus. I didn't speak up. What would it sound like? Jealousy? Pity. Better to save the moment. Store it. Like a receipt. Flashback hit. My 12th birthday. The bakery sent over a cake, custom ordered by my mom. It had Verity's name on it. She laughed, said it was cute. My dad took a photo before they scraped the name off. I got to blow out candles that year, but not before everyone said, well, at least you two share everything. Then there was the group photo for the company's annual magazine. I stood for 20 minutes. The photographer later said the angle wasn't right and asked me to step aside. I did. The photo ran full page. Verity in the middle. Our parents on each side. We forgot, they said. Forgetting, I've realized, is a polite way to erase someone without confrontation. It's what you do when you want them to leave, but don't want to look cruel doing it. I walked toward the far side of the ballroom, away from the sound. My cousin waved at me from across the room and pointed toward Verity with a thumbs up. I smiled back. She didn't know. I wasn't in the same room, even if I stood on the same floor. Same air. Different altitude. So I didn't interrupt the compliments. I didn't correct the assumption that I was PR or catering or someone's intern. Instead, I observed, silence isn't surrender. It's a scouting tool. I excused myself and slipped into the bathroom, locked the far stall, sat. There wasn't anger boiling. There wasn't sobbing. Just tile. and breath. Someone knocked lightly. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," I chirped, just fixing my lipstick. When I pulled out my phone, I didn't open Instagram. I opened my gallery, found the original version of the gala photo, the one from my own archive, not theirs, the one where I stood beside Dad, hand on his arm, smile crooked but present. I stared at it. Then I texted it to myself with 3 words: proof of presence. Usually I delete those drafts. Not this time. This time, I hit save. They don't get to rewrite me out of a life I lived. They will not convince me I was never there. By the time the dinner program started, the ballroom lights had dimmed to a soft amber glow. Waitstaff moved with clockwork precision, filling glasses and placing salad plates no one really wanted. I was standing near the back entrance, looking for a seat, not because I was late, but because someone had redirected me. A young coordinator with a headset waved me toward the hallway. "That section's for family and VIPs. You might be needed by the AV team, so hang close, okay?" She handed me a clipboard. Someone else gave me a badge labeled Operations. I didn't correct either of them. Didn't feel like wasting breath tonight. I glanced toward the main table. Verity was centered perfectly between our parents, her shoulders squared for the camera flashes. Her champagne glass was lifted before anyone else had touched theirs. And me? I wasn't just excluded. I wasn't even expected. A woman in a burgundy gown tapped me lightly. "Excuse me, do you know where the restrooms are?" I pointed down the hallway and gave a polite nod. She thanked me, assuming I was staff. And maybe, in their story, that's all I'd ever been. Dinner was underway. Between forks clinking and polite laughter, the MC took the mic. "We'd like to begin our tribute to those who made this journey possible." My shoulders tensed. I had submitted a video, short, simple, honoring the staff that worked late, the interns who carried half the weight for none of the credit, the quiet minds that never made it to the press releases. I'd edited it myself. 2:00 a.m., laptop overheating on my thighs. It was real, honest, the kind of thing I thought Verity would pretend to care about. The screen came to life, and there she was, 5 minutes of glossy, slow-motion footage, her shaking hands with state senators, her parents narrating stories of sacrifice and brilliance, her team clapping in unison, her name, her name, her name, my segment. Gone, not shortened, not rescheduled, gone, no mention, no error message, just gone. I blinked slowly, swallowed nothing. A soft chuckle escaped me, so quiet no one heard. Just me. And maybe God. My cousin leaned over, whispering, "Didn't you submit something?" I nodded once. "Probably got cut, not important." But inside, something different answered. They edited me out in post-production. Not just here, everywhere. I started counting in my head, same as I used to when Dad cut me off mid-sentence at the dinner table. 1, 2, 3, inhale. 4, 5, 6, smile. It worked, until it didn't. When the lights came back up, my mother took the mic, hair pinned, lips glossed, posture perfect. "We are so proud of our family," she said, "of the foundation we've built, of the way we've stood beside Verity as she chased excellence with courage." She gestured toward my father. He followed. "The pitch Verity gave last quarter, that came straight from her gut." "Yeah, that instinct. You don't teach that. She was born for this." I felt my jaw shift. That pitch? I gave her that idea during a phone call she barely stayed awake for. She asked me to email the outline. I did. She said thank you. And here we were. The applause that followed was generous, full of intention. They clapped like they'd been coached. I turned away and stepped into the side hallway, just past the kitchen doors. Servers passed me with trays, too busy to look twice. I stared at my phone screen, pretending to scroll. Truth was, I just needed somewhere to look besides the stage. The wall inside me was rising again. But this time, it wasn't to protect me from them. It was to protect them from what I could do if I let myself lose control. The next speaker was someone from Verity's investment board. Older man, gray suit, crisp voice. He started with, You know, stories like hers don't happen without humility, without a deep sense of where you come from. I finally opened my notes app. There it was. A speech I wrote years ago, for Verity. She'd asked for help preparing something for a Women in Leadership forum. I had poured hours into that draft, each sentence carefully measured, every transition soft but powerful. She had delivered it like she wrote it herself, word for word. It was in front of me now. Same speech, just with someone else's name on it. I didn't cry. I didn't clench my fists. I renamed the file. Receipts. I wasn't going to burst into that ballroom and scream. I wasn't going to drag anyone by the collar. They expected me to crack. That was the plan. Let her be the measured one, and me the mess. But I've learned that being underestimated is a slow kind of power. You just have to be willing to wait. And piece by piece, I was collecting everything I needed. Before dinner service started, I slipped away to the coordinator's office behind the main ballroom and handed one of the event assistants a small black box. "Could you place this in Verity Casmi's private suite?" I asked. He nodded, distracted by a radio in his hand. It was a jewelry box, mahogany, engraved with our grandfather's initials, JW, etched into the lid in gold. Inside, I'd tucked a note, just a few lines in my handwriting. "You built something incredible. I hope one day we remember how we used to build things together. Congratulations." It wasn't a demand. It wasn't an olive branch either. More like a soft gesture in a war I hadn't signed up for. A final courtesy. I didn't want to thank you. But maybe I hoped she'd hold it for a second and remember when we used to be sisters, not brands. Sometimes, when you're raised in a house where silence is rewarded and confrontation is punished, you learn to give instead of ask. Because asking never led anywhere good. An hour later, they called me up. "Thayer Marceau will now introduce our closing segment," the MC said, motioning me to the side podium. I'd written a short introduction, 30 seconds tops, a light wrap-up to bridge into Verity's award presentation. I didn't need applause, just airspace. I stepped up, held the microphone, blinked under the spotlight. "Tonight's been static, then nothing, dead mic." I glanced at the technician across the room. He didn't move. I waited, still nothing. The MC stepped toward me with a smile too polished to be real. "Technical glitch. Happens in these old buildings," he whispered, slipping in front of me. He motioned the program forward, thanked the sponsors, welcomed Verity back up. The crowd chuckled politely. From my seat near the edge, I saw my mother mouth something across the ballroom. "Tech issues. Don't overreact." I didn't, but I stood there for a second too long, because it wasn't the microphone. It was the moment. That thin space between speaking and being silenced. Even my voice, my literal voice, had to be granted permission. And tonight, they revoked it. I walked out the side door, not through the crowd, but behind the curtain, into the hallway that led to the staff bathrooms and dressing area. I didn't know why I went there. I just needed somewhere quiet. That's when I saw it. Next to the sink, on the counter. Under a paper towel someone had crumpled and left. The jewelry box, still tied, still unopened. The note was inside, folded exactly how I'd placed it, untouched. No one had moved it. No one had passed it along. Maybe it never made it to her. Or maybe it did. I stood there, not blinking, not breathing too hard. Then I picked it up, opened it, read my own handwriting. I didn't tear the note. I didn't throw the box. I just put it back in my bag. And whispered to no one in particular, "Never again." There's a quote I read once, Toni Morrison, I think. "If you want to fly, you have to give up the things that weigh you down." I didn't fully understand it until that moment because I'd been carrying something heavier than bitterness. Hope they'd see me, hope they'd say, "We were wrong," hope they'd say my name without choking on it. But they didn't, and they won't. And I'm done handing out chances to people who think dignity is a courtesy I owe them. In front of the mirror, I looked at myself, hair slightly undone, lipstick faded, eyes tired. Not tired like lack of sleep, tired like being erased for too long. I gave my last good thing, I thought, and even that wasn't worth picking up. I remembered something my father once said in front of board members after I gave him a spreadsheet that saved a merger. "She's got a soft heart. Not built for this world." That's why Verity's the one stepping up. He smiled. They laughed. That smile, I wore it too. For years. Thinking softness was a curse. Now I know better. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be remembered. I walked back into the ballroom, not to sit, but to stand near the tech booth. I asked for a copy of the evening's footage. The tech guy hesitated, then handed me a flash drive. Probably thought I was coordinating with the AV team. I said thank you and took it. As I watched the final segment project across the ballroom wall, Verity's name glowing in gold letters, followed by the phrase, "built from resilience," I clenched my jaw, then smiled, not the kind they taught me to wear, the kind you make when something inside you shifts. No more jewelry boxes, no more notes. From now on, records, not ribbons. I opened my phone, renamed the file, Proof, and thought to myself, forgiveness is for the innocent. I've been made into something else. The hallway behind the ballroom was quiet, the kind of quiet you only get in spaces where people assume nothing important ever happens. My heels slowed as I reached the side exit door, cracked open just enough to let in cool air from the alley. I stepped out, not sure where I was going, just away from applause, away from that screen flashing Verity's name like it was a brand. Thayer. I turned. Serena Boyd. I hadn't seen her in years. We used to work together. Finance. She was sharp, always 2 steps ahead of whatever narrative the firm wanted to spin. She held something in her hand, a flash drive. I never deleted anything, she said. Figured, maybe someday you'd need it. I took it without saying thank you. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because it felt too small a word. There are drafts, memos, audio files, Zoom calls, you name it. All the things you did, all the times your name was there, before they took it off. I nodded, still processing. I saw what they did to you, she added. But back then I wasn't brave enough to say it. I wanted to tell her she wasn't the only one who wasn't brave, but instead I just said, thank you. She touched my arm and walked back inside like she'd just passed a baton. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens or fireworks. Sometimes it's handed to you in silence. Backstage, in one of the dimly lit service corridors, I plugged the flash drive into my phone. The folders loaded quickly. My eyes locked onto one labeled Keynote Final. It opened in Word. My words, the exact speech Verity had given that evening, line for line, same pacing, same structure, same closing line. At the bottom, bolded in gray, Draft by T. Marceau, for internal review only. I sat down on an overturned crate and scrolled slowly. Date stamp, version history, even the original file name. Thayer topic notes, March 21, docx. Not even hidden. I exhaled. A quiet, ugly laugh slipped out. Not from humor, but because the absurdity of it finally reached the surface. They erased me by copying and pasting. They edited my name out of a Word doc, I muttered to myself, and called it Legacy. I spent the next 45 minutes sitting cross-legged in that corridor, downloading everything. PDFs, voice memos, memos with my tracked edits, email exchanges, all of it. I made folders. Proof. Legal. Legacy. Personal. I labeled each file as if my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. I added screenshots of the slideshow Verity played earlier, the video she cut me from, the photo wall I was cropped out of. With each click, my hands got steadier. I wasn't organizing files. I was building a case. Not for court. Not yet. For history. If they'd given me credit, I whispered, I would have never needed evidence. I stood, stretched, walked toward the back corner of the room. Across the ballroom, I could hear them prepping for the family photo, the big finale shot that'd go into the company newsletter, the press release, the alumni magazine. I had time. I thought about interrupting the photo, walking right up and letting it all spill. But no, that would make it emotional. I needed it strategic. This wasn't about revenge. This was about rhythm. Timing isn't just for music. It's for memory. I texted Serena. You're not done helping me. She replied less than a minute later. Didn't come back to stay quiet. I smiled. Not wide, just enough. Back at the booth, I uploaded everything to a secure folder. then backed it up to the external drive in my bag. Double locks. Then I opened my notes app. Typed one sentence. I was never supposed to be seen. Then another. But now I will be remembered. I saved the draft. Not for now, but soon. I glanced up at the ceiling, eyes closed. Played Verity's speech again in my mind. Word for word. A perfect performance of my sentences from someone who never asked if she could use them. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt ready. The hallway opened toward the stage, where lights were adjusting and assistants were guiding people toward their marks. I checked my phone. Everything backed up. I slipped the flash drive into the side pocket of my purse, pressed it flat, zipped it. Let them take the picture, I whispered. I'll give them something worth remembering. The ballroom had shifted again. Plates cleared, lights softened, people moved slower now, like the weight of wine and small talk had finally sunk into their bones. The photo station near the main entrance was backlit in soft gold, and the photographer called family members over for a legacy moment. That's when Marisol stood and held up her hand. She didn't need a microphone. Everyone leaned in. Tonight, she said, is not just about achievement, it's about tradition and legacy. I already knew where this was going. She pulled out a velvet ring box and opened it toward the crowd. This ring belonged to my mother. It's been passed down for 3 generations. She turned toward Verity, who stood beside her like a crowned debutante. You've always been the one who carried our name with pride, she said, sliding the ring onto Verity's finger with careful grace. Applause erupted like thunder. People clinked glasses. A few shouted, "Well deserved," or "About time." I didn't move, just stood quietly near the curtain. Not surprised, not even stung, really. They didn't just give her a ring. They sealed a story I was written out of. I was watching them build a statue out of bones that weren't all hers. It wasn't long after when I felt a tug on the hem of my dress. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, big eyes, white lace gloves, the niece of one of Verity's board members, I think. "Are you the nanny?" she asked. Her voice was sweet. Her smile was honest. No malice, just mirrors. "No, sweetheart," I said, kneeling slightly. "I'm just visiting." She nodded, satisfied, and ran off toward the dessert table. Nobody else heard. But I did, and it landed harder than most of the speeches. When people erase you long enough, even strangers stop seeing you. I walked to the back of the ballroom again, near the tech booth, where the stagehands were reviewing mic placements for the final set of announcements, pulled out my phone, started texting. To Serena. "Footage ready?" To the AV tech. "You still have the files, right?" To the lawyer. "Confirmed email received?" All 3 came back with yes. I didn't breathe relief. I calculated it. This wasn't going to be a scene. It was going to be a shift. I didn't want noise. I wanted documentation. I used to think truth had to be shouted to be heard, but I've learned the truth just needs to be verified. I turned as Verity approached. She was smiling, careful not to blink too wide in the flashes. Her hand with the ring now glistened with every movement. "Hey," she said, low enough for only me to hear. "Thanks for being chill tonight." She leaned in for a hug, the kind that looks warm but feels like cold silk. I hugged her back and whispered, "Check your inbox before midnight." Her body tensed just enough to register it. She pulled away with the same smile. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see her face. I already knew what would be there. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. I walked past the floral arch, the rented harpist, the waiter offering espresso martinis, back up to the balcony overlooking the main ballroom. It was quiet up there. You could see everyone at once. My parents still beaming, Verity holding court like royalty. They were laughing, waving, performing, exactly as they'd been trained. Then my phone buzzed. Serena. All copies confirmed, time stamped, backed up. The lawyer. Acknowledged receipt, standing by. I closed my eyes, not to cry, just to reset, because this wasn't a family party anymore. It was the final rehearsal before history changed. Verity's voice was polished, as always, even in her final speech. "This legacy wasn't built alone," she said, glancing across the crowd. "It was shaped by mentors, opportunities, and a family that never stopped believing in me. The crowd gave her exactly what she wanted: smiles, raised glasses, subtle nods from people already preparing headlines in their heads. And then I moved. No spotlight, no announcement, just a woman in flats walking across the ballroom floor holding a plain white envelope. Some thought I was coming to toast, maybe offer another silent smile. That's how these things go, right? Make peace for the cameras, be gracious, be forgettable. I didn't take the mic, I just held the envelope up. Not in the air, just enough to make people stop chewing. I wasn't on the list tonight, I said, but I have something that was never meant to be hidden. No one spoke. Even Verity froze for a half second. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. You don't have to raise your voice when you're holding the truth. I opened the envelope slowly, pulled out a letter, signed and notarized. Jasper Wren, my grandfather. It was dated 2 years before he passed. The ink hadn't faded. The notary seal was clean. In the letter, he named me. Not Verity, not my father, not a trust, me. As the rightful recipient of several assets, his personal account, his original stake in the startup, and the East Side property my mother told everyone Verity had inherited due to strategic planning. I didn't look at anyone when I read it. I read it like it was a prayer. This isn't about money, I said. This is about being erased and brought back by the only person who actually saw me. By then, the cameras had turned. The phones were up. The laughter had stopped. Even the staff was still. And then, from the back of the room, came footsteps. Slow, steady. Manny, our old driver. Retired, quiet. The man who drove us to school every Monday, who kept mints in the glove box and called me kiddo even when I was 25. He held another envelope. He walked toward me and stood beside me, facing the room like it was just another Monday morning. Mr. Wren asked me to deliver this, he said, voice firm. He said it wasn't to be opened until someone else told the truth first. He placed the envelope in my hand, then stepped back. I opened it, a copy of the same letter, plus a voice recording, Jasper's voice, clear and deliberate, naming me again, explaining why. Guests shifted. The air changed. This wasn't a family drama anymore. This was evidence. They'd underestimated the wrong person. Not me. Him. The quiet one. Marisol stepped forward, her voice cracked around the edges. This has to be a misunderstanding. I turned slowly toward her. No, I said, calmly. You misunderstood who had the power to define legacy. Verity opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. I nodded at the technician. The screen behind us changed. Legal filings, transaction logs, dates, titles, my name, clean, undeniable. The family photo still projected on the wall. Everyone smiling, the picture perfect. A lie frozen in pixels. Someone whispered behind me, loud enough to carry. So she wasn't just the quiet one. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope. Thanked the technician with a nod. The slideshow stopped. The lights dimmed. I didn't bow. I didn't linger. I didn't wait for applause. I walked toward the balcony doors and stepped outside, into air that finally felt breathable. Manny followed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. We stood there, side by side, overlooking the city skyline. They built a legacy on image, I said. I found mine in the fine print they hoped no one would read. A pause. And then, in my head, I heard Jasper's voice again, something he said to me once when I was 14 and scared I'd never matter. You don't have to shout to be heard, but you do have to stand where silence is no longer acceptable. Tonight, I did. I woke up with the curtain open and sunlight already spilling across the floor. My dress, still crumpled on the hotel armchair, smelled like champagne and someone else's perfume. I hadn't even pulled the sheets over me. No buzz from the phone. No missed calls. No, we're sorry. But 12 unread messages from strangers, people I didn't know, people who watched it happen. Thank you for speaking up. Reminded me of my sister. My daughter needed to hear that. I didn't win anything last night. I reclaimed something that should have never been up for grabs in the first place. Legacy, maybe. Or my name. I stood and stretched. Pulled open the window farther. New Haven looked cleaner in the morning light, like the city had shed its costume from the night before. The celebration was over. But something else was starting. Some endings wear tuxedos. Others look like walking barefoot across a hotel room, checking your phone for closure that never comes. I reached for my bag, pulled out the jewelry box I had once offered in good faith. The same one they'd left beside a used napkin in the bathroom. The same one I didn't throw away. This time, I didn't feel the sting in my chest when I looked at it. No bitterness, just clarity. I placed it on the desk, took out a pen and scribbled a new note. This wasn't for you. It was for me, not a gift, a record, a reminder of who I was before I let their silence shrink me. I smiled. Small, real. I used to give because I wanted to be seen. Now, I give because I've already seen myself. Before leaving, I checked my inbox one last time. There it was. Verity's email. Cold, polite, professionally composed by someone who probably charged by the hour. I regret the confusion caused. I'd appreciate privacy moving forward. No acknowledgement, no ownership, no heart. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer and archived the thread. Some people apologize with silence. Others with PR firms. But silence isn't a punishment anymore. It's proof that I no longer expect anything from her. And that's the real shift. Later that afternoon, I met Manny on the rooftop lounge of the hotel. The air up there was thinner, but it didn't feel like it pressed on me. We sipped coffee in silence. Finally, he said, "Your grandfather knew who you were." So did I. I looked at him, not like a child, not like someone needing reassurance, but as a peer. "Do you ever regret not speaking up?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Every day. But speaking up late is still better than dying with the truth." That landed like a stone in my chest, not because it hurt, but because it echoed. I realized then, my voice, my fight, my refusal to disappear, it wasn't just about me anymore. It was permission for someone else. Someone who's been watching their name get erased from the family photo year after year, wondering if they were crazy or just unwanted. It was for them. Not long after, I walked back into the now empty ballroom. Cleanup crews were folding chairs, stacking glassware, wiping the sheen off the tables. The air had settled. No music, no laughter, just the faint hum of normal returning. I walked to the front row. The seats were still numbered. Mine had never been one of them. But there was one chair left, far end, nearest the stage. I didn't sit. I stopped in front of it, placed my hand on the backrest, and stood there for a beat, long enough to feel the old ache try to sneak up. Then I turned and walked past it. I didn't need the seat. I have the stage now, not because I asked for it, but because I stopped waiting for someone to offer it. They built their legacy on curated moments and camera angles. Mine lives in the margin notes, in saved drafts, in witnesses who stayed quiet for too long, but finally stepped forward. One last thought played in my head. Something Jasper said once, years ago, when I asked him why he never cared about being the loudest voice in a room. You don't have to shout to be heard, but you do have to stand where silence is no longer acceptable. I finally understood what he meant.